Welcome to Power Up, the podcast that uncovers the unique challenges women leaders face today. Join your hosts, Nat and Kristen, as we dive into the tough topics and provide actionable insights you can apply right now. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Okay, testing one last time.
Testing on double pillows. Did you get these pillows from Stacks?
Probably not.
I want to get this beautiful pink check kind of tartan material to do a chair. Oh, it's going to be great.
I agree. That sounds fabulous.
Hello, everyone. Today we thought we might take a slightly different approach. And this is a Minisode, isn't it, Kristen? This is Minisode. And we thought, we've talked a little bit recently, we did a couple of podcasts on and newsletters on the menstruation cycle and period hacking. And then in a perfect twist of fate, Kristen ended up having to be rushed to hospital effectively for period-related drama. And so we thought what we might do is just talk a little bit about this kind of, that sparked a little bit of a ongoing saga that feels like something we don't talk about enough. So what we thought we might do is break that non-talking, and as we're going through it, well, as Kristen's going through it, I'm joining in, that we might talk about it and talk a bit about what you're experiencing. And it sort of raises a whole bunch of different questions around women's healthcare and how under-researched it is, and just start to share these stories so that if you're listening and you're going through something similar or something different, you have a place to send your emails to and tell us about your stories, and we can start to shine a light on some of these stupidly under-talked about, under-researched, under-helped medical issues that we go through.
It's effectively everything women and gynae related.
Gynae.
So, gynae is just terrible.
It sounds Canadian. Gynae.
Well, because I don't know how to say gynaecological.
Oh, well done.
But it's this everything from pregnancy and inability to get pregnant and issues there, to endometriosis, to menstrual period, and the spectrum of issues related to that, be it pain or flow or duration, right through to perimenopause. And I'm surrounded by women my age that are just getting into this. We are increasingly talking about it, which is great. I love that workplaces are starting to recognize menopause, but I mean, we just need to talk more about all women gynaecological issues.
Yeah, and I think I was talking to my mum about it this weekend, and she said that it's a very embarrassing topic, and I thought that was such an interesting word to use, because we have, and I'm posting in the newsletter this week, this really cool series on menstrual blood and how it's revolutionizing science if we just put some money into researching it at all. And I thought embarrassing is so interesting because this series talks a lot about how scientists, even scientists, have the ick about women's bodies. Like, they're seen for centuries as dirty and bleeding is gross, and that leads to this tragic lack of understanding. And all of us are pottering through our lives on our own without really understanding what's happening to us a lot of the time, and sort of sucking it up and dealing with all sorts of stupid things that we shouldn't have to. So I replied, and I still think very strongly, I'm sick of being embarrassed, and now I'm just annoyed, and I think we need to talk more about it. So let's break that stigma and stop being embarrassed about our bodies.
Amazing.
So do you want to start by giving as much background as you'd like to about your story or the...
Yeah, I will. So on the menstrual podcasts, I had mentioned that I was regular, always. Like, you could pin down...
You tempted the period gods.
It's our fault. Oh, man. But I had been regular my entire life, and it was predictable, and there were never issues. I didn't have issues conceiving. And I have since had normal and regular periods, a couple polypses that needed to be removed. But other than that, no major concerns until my period about 3 weeks ago, where I just, like, it was crazy. I basically hemorrhaged, and I hemorrhaged for around, I think it was about 10 hours, but had to go to hospital within an hour. And I remember Googling at the time, like, what is normal?
We had this funny, like, panicked conversation, because I think we were both like, We don't know.
Yeah, well, and I was by myself in the house, and I thought the last thing I need is to be like, they're like, if you feel dizzy because of the loss of blood, and I thought, I don't want to be by myself in this house.
I'll turn up to record the podcast, and Kristen will be lying in a pool of blood.
This is insane. So then I Googled, and they said if you have more than one tampon in a 2-hour period, and I'm like, 12 tampons in an hour. Like, this isn't normal.
That's scary.
Yeah. So then I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. The doctor was closed. And so I just got in the car, had a few panicked phone calls to different people, including yourself, Nat, as to like, where do I even go?
What do you mean to do in this position?
I know. So then I rock into the after hours, which is where I ended up. And they give you a form, at which point I was like panicked and just wanted to get into a room. So I quickly filled out this form.
Can I say, sorry to interrupt again, but I just find that hilarious when you go into these after hours or emergency and they're like, please fill out this form. And you're like, I'm dying. Like, often you're in this state of high stress and they don't ask and they expect you to like fill out a form, and you're like, no.
You feel automatically you feel dramatic. Like, if I were to demand anything of myself, I will be viewed as this demanding Karen or whatever. So I fill out the form, which was completely illegible. And when I handed it back, I said, I'm hemorrhaging and I want to see someone right now. Well, within 3 minutes, I was in a room, and within 5, I had been kind of assessed, and I had a line in me, and I was lying on a bed. And yeah, it wasn't great.
No, that was, I mean, even when I turned up, it was pretty, you didn't look very happy, and fortunately they took it quite seriously, but I think that's probably the first point here is our experience of getting healthcare, because I even have a friend who was having a baby, got to hospital, and they asked her to fill out a form, and she literally said, I have a baby in my pants. Her baby had been half born in her pants, and she had to advocate loudly for herself to be taken seriously, because, you know, women are over exaggerating when we're going through labor, and we pretend to be in more pain than we are. So I think that's probably the first point, is that experience is pretty rubbish, and that idea of not actually knowing where to go, that was a real light bulb for me of like, always have a bit of a plan for this, because when time comes and you're in that panic station, it's actually really hard to know and think straight.
And it was interesting, what do you say, blessing in disguise, in that it happened in such a traumatic way. They would not have made me an appointment with a gynecologist. The only reason I got in to see someone good is because I am what is considered acute. We're in Wellington, New Zealand, and I trust that the situation is similar in public healthcare systems all over the world. And I just found this news article. Basically, right now, the hospitals have a mandate that says only women who have seen a gynecologist in the public system in Wellington are those with suspected cancer, extreme pelvic pain requiring hospitalization, or new cases of like extreme serious condition distress, and there's a few of those, of which mine fell under. So had I gone, my periods feel longer, I feel really crampy, this doesn't feel normal, I would have gone to a GP, I would have been fobbed off, they might have put me on a wait list, and unless it had happened in the way it had happened, I wouldn't have gotten in to see a gynecologist, which is crazy.
It is crazy, and it probably points to healthcare systems in general being under-resourced. But it is funny that we have these uteruses and all of these bits that really need servicing.
Yeah.
And unless you're in absolute crisis, you don't get access to it. So then you had some tests and a few different procedures. I don't know how much detail is.
Yeah, well, that was scary, because they're like, we see something and we don't know quite what it is. Of course, my brain goes to worst case scenario. So I'm like, Nat, we better do video now, because, you know, I'm about to go into treatment. And I basically planned like the next few months of my life in treatment, because she's like, I feel a mass in your stomach and all this stuff. So
I think that was the point as well, that we regularly get cervical smears. Like, that's a key health tool that we can use, which, side note, have changed recently. If you, I don't know if it's around the world, but if you regularly get smears and you have had very normal ones, you can now get an at-home test, which is far less invasive. So I don't know if that would work for me. I've had some abnormal situations, but I know people now who have been just given an at-home test. So if that's something that's scary to you, absolutely go and try and get one of those, because that might lower the threshold and make you go actually do it if you're not currently doing it, because that is one of the things you can do to really preventative healthcare, which is incredibly important. But you'd been to yours and then these things had grown in a year, which always feels very scary.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I still wasn't considered an emergency case, so I had to go home and wait a week. I think it was a week for my scan. So that was quite...
How much did you sleep in that week?
Yeah, and that's unsettling. And this isn't even like scary stuff, right? Like that's still, well, in retrospect, I didn't know that, but that's still really unsettling to have to wait that long for the scan. And so I did. And then I went in for the scan, and that, again, you have to wait a whole other week for someone to call and tell you what's going on, which was the call today. So effectively, I have, and I'm going to not be able to say this properly.
Honestly, they should need to use less jargon for women's healthcare.
I have something called adenomyosis, and that is effectively endometriosis in my uterine lining. I did not have it 2 years ago because I know I had a scan and a polyps removed 2 years ago. So I know I had a relatively healthy, well, I had a healthy uterus 2 years ago. So this is something that's come on. I'm reading that it can be caused by, I don't know, too much estrogen or something. Clearly, I've got hormonal issues. I am 46, going into perimenopause. So at first I was trying to go, this is definitely perimenopause, which is really heavy periods. And then now 2 weeks later, I've got another one. So this is a second one, cramping, feeling grumpy, all of that stuff. And so I was thinking maybe this is perimenopause, which it could be.
And endometriosis, I'm just looking at your notes, is referred to as the missed disease because so little is still known about it. And my understanding is you actually can't get diagnosed with it unless they do pretty invasive things, like scans seem the very least of that, and that's quite an internal investigation, right? So it's not exactly nice to have, and that leads to a lot of unreporting, because who's going to put their hand up to have something like that happen if you don't need to? It always boggles my mind, the things that women go through or are expected to go through. I mean, I don't know if there's any, well, I'm going to say men listening, people without uteruses listening who have never had a smear. I mean, it's like being walked back to the Middle Ages. Some of the things that we go through regularly of like these giant metal cold contraptions that like crank up and are shoved, like it's awful. So I think endometriosis, very undiagnosed and often overlooked or put down to feelings in your own head or all of that sort of stuff.
So women suffer in pain.
So you are not alone on that, but it's quite interesting for you that it's come about quite quickly as well, which is not something that I would have known. I just thought it's something you always had or you don't have, but it's developed for you.
It's so annoying. So I'm still just like settling with it because that call was just today, and it's really annoying, but I know that you can go on hormones, which is likely what you would do with perimenopause as well. You have a real drop in both estrogen and progesterone, but they put you on progesterone. So that's what I'm getting. My lovely husband's going to bring it home for me today, although I have to figure out. Of course, I'm going to do a bit of research on the actual pill because she gave me 3 options on the phone. I picked the one that made sense to me at the time while I was analysing my options. And
on the phone, probably in the space of a couple of minutes with no prior knowledge.
Yeah, because back to my original point, she's like, I'm so sorry, we can't see you. There's a wait list that is a year long and we're never going to get you in. So I'm just going to tell you right now what your 3 options were. So I haven't done any research, but he's going to bring home one of those 3 options. I'll do a bit of research. I'll start on that. And then I guess my previous point was that that's what I would have had to go on if it was perimenopause anyway. So in a way, the symptoms are probably combining to create havoc for me, and hopefully this progesterone will help.
And that's we talked about this briefly this morning, but that's probably another thing to mention here. What was the name of that hormone HRT, hormone replacement therapy? That my understanding recently, because I'm a mad podcaster, is that particular medication got given an incredibly bad reputation. Very similar, I relate it to the idea of children developing autism after vaccines, that there was some very poor science that went on. And there was one research paper that then turned the whole world against HRT because it was related or linked to breast cancer, I think it was. I'll find some more links for this, but it does sound like that has now been debunked, and well and truly debunked. But we still have, because there's so little research and so many stories, that some of these medications can sound quite scary. So I think the other note here is to really just do a Google around and look into them and ask your doctor if you have any sort of stigma around some of these medications, because all is not what it may seem if you read a news story 10 years ago or whatever, whenever that kerfuffle happened.
Well, I've been Googling, and I've even found famous people who have what I have.
You're famous! You are famous adjacent.
Yeah. So Amy Schumer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Did you know that?
Yes, I think she's talked about it quite publicly a bit. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, I presume all of these people have, because otherwise you wouldn't know.
True. Alexa Chung.
Oh, yes.
Lena Dunham.
Uh-huh.
Emma Barnett. Gabrielle Union.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So these are incredibly, I don't know, well-known, high-profile people that are willing to step up and share their struggles. And then there are a number of countless celebrities who are sharing their struggle with endometriosis as well.
Congratulations to them, because that's, especially when you're in the spotlight and you probably live in a world where you get slammed for everything, very brave to do. But, I mean, the more we talk about it, the more it's normalized, right? So the more, I mean, it's literally flesh growing in the wrong area, isn't it? It's your lining growing in the wrong parts of your body. I mean, It's ridiculous how awful it is, and how we're meant to suffer in silence and dignity with our lady problems.
Oh no, well this one I can't even figure out how I would function without going on a pill, because of the amount of flow that happens. You can't function. Like, I'd have to stay inside a couple days a month, not do anything, not go anywhere, not to mention the, I don't know, discomfort and other symptoms that come up. But I just think it's just messy and it's annoying. It's all very
yet
annoying.
Another example of, like, you should just suck it up and deal with it. It's like, it's 2024, people. Like, how long's Viagra been functional? Like, it's literally like, spend some money on this stuff. There's half the world's population going through it.
Exactly.
And I think I thought it was really interesting the other day, you were talking about a particular medication that you're struggling to get your hands on because it's really popular.
Yeah, that's the one that actually stops the bleeding, and you just take 3. It doesn't solve anything, but it can actually get you out of a bit of a pickle if you're somewhere and it starts, and it's really, really heavy. And we had to go to 3 chemists before we finally found a chemist who had it, and the first chemist just looked at it and said, good luck, this is out of stock, there's so many women on this right now. So finally the third one said, oh yeah, we've got lots of clients on this, so we have to plan with their cycles, therefore we have a bunch of it currently on stock, and so we can give you some. So I've got some should I need it.
I just had a couple of quick stats around menopause. So we've talked a little bit about endometriosis, which is a very widespread condition, which turns out, even just your experience, we have learned a fair bit about how it just appears one day. Menopause I find really interesting, because they say about 25% of menopausal women going through menopause get symptoms that actually substantially impact their ability to work. A quarter of us. They do say menopause hits in between 45 and 60, but I think we've talked about this before. I think it was about 38, 39 that I started to get 2 to 3 day, they're getting up to 3 day now, headaches. I'm going to go to the doctor too every month. So perimenopause feels like yet another really unresearched area that who knows when that actually hits in.
Well, apparently menopause is, you are in menopause 12 months after your last cycle. So that is menopause. And basically everything from, it could have been your late 30s, it could be your 40s, that is perimenopause.
And that's where your hormones are all changing around. Correct. And that causes all the other clusters that come along, like headaches. I think that brings brain fog as well, and very heavy periods, irregular periods, all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to talk...
Night sweats.
Yeah. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and actually go to the doctor about it, because I've done the classic of just accepting that I just get headaches all the time, and that's not acceptable, that we just survive with that.
My hope, and I have yet to be through this, and anyone who's been through this, let us know what we're supposed to advocate for and ask for. But my assumption is to test your hormone levels. That would be my assumption.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
And then the tragedy there is often the treatment, and you've talked about it, is the contraceptive pill, which I don't want to go on, but I will if I have to. Or we call it the Mirena here, which is yet another invasive surgery style procedure
Yeah.
that I know a bunch of people who've had without any anesthetic or anything. And again, outrage. I just refuse to have something else shoved up into my uterus without any pain relief. It's like the advice the latest person I've heard got was drop a couple of Panadol. Unfortunately, she was smart enough to ring around, and people who she knew in the medical field were like, take as much pain relief as you can possibly get your hands on within, medical limits.
Wow.
Because they just very flippant about take a couple of Panadol and get this metal device inserted into you. It's ridiculous.
I think that was my option one. I was like, nothing.
Yeah, we shouldn't be scared of these treatments. Like, this should be done. It's 2024. It shouldn't be painful to get that. It's shocking to me. 17% of women aged 45 to 64 reported taking an extended break from work in the last 5 years. My assumption there is there might be some element of caregiving involved, but I think this was largely related to menopause. And the saddest part, if we're talking about the gender leadership gap and gender wealth gap, is that menopause can also be a key factor in some women's decision to retire early. On average, we retire almost 10 years earlier than men, 7.4 years earlier, and that can mean a loss of earnings. This research is from Australia. Over $500,000 per woman in our careers. So this is serious stuff, and this is not embarrassing lady business. This is stuff that's impacting our wealth, our health, our happiness, and our ability to lead. So it needs to be fixed. Now I've talked about it, it makes me angry all over again.
Sorry. I'm too flat right now to be angry, but I will keep our listeners posted as I go through this journey. Please share yours with us, or just ask your friends. Starting to ask people, what is your experience with this? Is this normal? How are you feeling this month? And let's just start chatting about it.
Hashtag share your symptoms. Yeah. I think that's really important, because the number of times something like this happens, and you've had the same, you start telling people, and a lot of other women have gone through it, and you're like, why did you suffer alone? It's awful to think about that.
Here I am. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that, although it was maybe a bit of an intense graphic one.
Not embarrassing. It's our bodies.
Yeah, exactly. And we will catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.